Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavividetam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grinantiye Bhuridachana. In this class, we study the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is the English translation of the Bengali Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, which is the dialogues of Sri Ramakrishna teachings as recorded by M. Mahendranath Gupta. And we were on 29th March 1883. So this is the section which begins on page 194. But we had already started that. We read half of it last time. So I'm going to start on page 196. I had read this part, but I'll read it again. We haven't discussed it. So the way we usually do this is we read a little bit, I comment upon it, and it's an informal class, so people can raise their hands and give their observations, raise issues, ask questions, and discuss things. And congratulations to all of you, though you're the brave few in this inclement weather. All right. So page 196. Sri Ramakrishna is saying to Amrita and Trailokya, youngsters like Narendra and Rakhal are ever perfect. Every time they are born, they are devoted to God. An ordinary man acquires a little devotion after austerities and a hard struggle. But these boys have love of God from the very moment of their birth. They are like the natural image of Shiva, which springs forth from the earth and is not set up by human hands. The ever-perfect form are clasped by themselves. Not all birds have crooked beaks. The ever-perfect are never attached to the world. There is the instance of Prahlada. Ordinary people practice spiritual discipline and cultivate devotion to God. But they also become attached to the world and are caught in the glamour of lust and gold. They are like flies which sit on a flower or a sweetmeat and light on filth as well. But the ever-perfect are like bees which light only on flowers and sip the honey. The ever-perfect drink only the nectar of divine bliss. They are never inclined to worldly pleasures. The devotion of the ever-perfect is not like the ordinary devotion that one acquires as a result of strenuous spiritual discipline. Ritualistic devotion consists in repeating the name of God and performing worship in a prescribed manner. It's like crossing the rice field in a roundabout way along the bulk. Again, it's like reaching a nearby village by a boat in a roundabout way along a winding river. One does not follow the injunctions of ceremonial worship when one develops raga bhakti, when one loves God as one's own. Then it is like crossing a rice field after the harvest. You don't have to walk along the bulk. You can go straight across the field in any direction. When the country is flooded deep with water, one doesn't have to follow the winding river. Then the fields are deep underwater. You can row your boat straight to the village. Without this intense attachment, this passionate love, one cannot realize God. Amrita, sir, how do you feel in samadhi? Master, you may have heard that the cockroach, by intensely meditating on the Brahmara, is transformed into a Brahmara. Do you know how I feel then? I feel like a fish released from a pot into the water of the Ganges. Amrita, don't you feel at that time even a trace of the ego? Master, yes, generally a little of it remains. However hard you may rub a grain of gold against a grindstone, still a little bit of it always remains. Or again, take the case of a big fire. The ego is like one of its sparks. In samadhi, I lose outer consciousness completely, but God generally keeps a little trace of the ego in me for the enjoyment of divine communion. Enjoyment is possible only when I and you remain. Again, sometimes God effaces even that trace of I, then one experiences Jara Samadhi or Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That experience cannot be described. A salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean, but before it had gone far into the ocean, it melted away. It became entirely one with the water of the ocean. Then who was to come back and tell the ocean's depth? All right, so that's the section. And then another section starts after this. So, he's talking first about, he says about Narendra, Rakhal, some of his direct disciples. Narendra is Vivekananda. Rakhal was Swami Brahmananda. And Sri Ramakrishna held that all of them were not like the rest of us. So the rest of us we are born under the impulse of our past karma. And so we have to evolve spiritually and through struggle, maybe lifetime after lifetime. And then finally we attain to enlightenment and freedom from samsara. However, there are some. So for example, the avatar, the incarnation of God, comes not with past karma. It's God incarnating among human beings in order to help us towards enlightenment. That's an avatar. Not the Hollywood kind. The Hollywood kind is, of course, the word is taken from this avatar as an incarnation, a descent of the divine. So they don't come with any past karma. So when Ramachandra comes, or Krishna, or Jesus, or all the incarnations of God, they don't come here with past karma. They come with a mission to, enlighten and liberate us. And there is this whole avatarology which has grown around them, especially in among the Vaishnavas. So one feature of that is, not only does the avatar, incarnation of God come, the incarnation of God brings along with them certain other enlightened beings who still retain their individuality. And they come to help in the divine mission or the Leela of the avatar. So those who come with the avatar, they are also not like the rest of us. They are also not coming here to work out their karma and attain God realization. They come here to help the avatar in the Leela, the play of the avatar. And the idea is that every time an avatar comes, such a group of great masters who are already liberated, they come. You know the story about Sri Ramakrishna himself. So in a vision, he saw 7 sages. He says, my mind soared to a plane beyond all duality. So there's a realm beyond the realm of the gods, beyond the realm of the God with form. So formless existence, consciousness bliss. And somehow, in that formless existence, consciousness bliss, he says, I still saw 7 sages who were immersed in meditation. There's an interesting point to be understood here about what formlessness and form is actually. Formlessness, non-duality doesn't mean that there won't be any forms. It's the recognition of the non-dual reality when that becomes predominant. It's like you have all the waves in the ocean, but if your focus is on the water, from that perspective, all the waves are just water. So there can still be waves in the ocean. There can still be 7 sages meditating in the realm of non-duality. But the emphasis there is not on the forms of God, but on non-duality itself. And from that mass of radiance surrounding them, a child emerges with a form and then goes to one of those rishis, the sages who are meditating. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna saw. And partially awakens this sage from his non-dual meditation and says, the world is drowning in ignorance, in darkness. I am going there. Will you not come with me? And that sage gives assent through his look. And then that child races earthward. And that's the story. And then when Sri Ramakrishna saw Narendranath for the first time, he recognized Narendranath as that sage. And what is implied here is the child is Sri Ramakrishna. But the idea is that when God incarnates, God brings with himself this group of enlightened beings. Narendranath, of course, knew none of this, and he thought Sri Ramakrishna was crazy. So that's one point. And the characteristic of these people, of such perfected ones, is, Sri Ramakrishna says, even every time they are born, they are devoted to God. So why would they be born? We are born every time because we are progressing in our spiritual life towards enlightenment and freedom. But they are born as part of a divine mission. Difference, Sri Ramakrishna says, an ordinary man acquires a little devotion after austerities and a hard struggle, but these boys have love of God from the very moment of their birth. They are like the natural image of Shiva. Now, this is an idea in India where Shiva is worshipped in the Shiva Linga. Now, some of them are constructed for and installed for worship of Shiva, but some are what are called natural. You find them on the river beds, you find them sometimes. And the idea is that these are places where Shiva naturally manifests himself, and they are valued, such Shivalingas. Little story here. I remember there is this school for non-dualists in Rishikesh. This is called Kailash Ashram, and it was founded not so long ago by Dhanraj Giri, a wandering monk who is to teach, is a non-dualist Advaitin. Now, one day, he was on his way, I think, from Rishikesh to Haridwar, to Kankhal. These are all places inhabited by monks, even now, but now there are a lot of, there's like a built-up area, like a city now. In those days, just monks used to live there. It's quite a distance by foot. So the story goes, he was walking there, and in between, he wanted to take a break. He lay down under a tree and took a nap, monk style, with hand at your pillow. And he had a dream. Shiva came to him in his dream and he said, I am there. Dig me up and take me and keep me with you. So in the dream, this monk replies, but I am a penniless monk. How can I? So if you bring Shiva to your house, you have to install a regular worship, and it's quite a paraphernalia, So how can I, render you proper worship? I have nothing. I subsist on begging, and I just teach the Vedanta. That's all I do. And Shiva says, that's what I want. I want to listen to you teaching the Vedanta. Just keep me with you. So 2 or 3 times he gets this dream, again and again. So he wakes up, and then he sees the spot which was indicated to him in the dream, and he goes and digs there. And lo and behold, he finds this beautiful Shiva Linga. This is a story. And then he brings it back to his cottage. Cottage means it was like made of branches and wood, and then he keeps it with him and giving simple worship. Now, in a short while, things begin to change. There is this person who comes to him, a rich person, merchant, and who bows down to him and says, "What can I do for you?" This monk said, "Look, we study the Vedanta, and I've got all these manuscripts with me, and during the rainy season, the rain leaks through these, the roof is just leaves and branches, so it leaks through that and spoils the manuscripts. So if we could have a permanent room, like a constructed made of concrete or something, brick room, so we can keep the manuscripts there." So the rich man constructs it, and that's the first room of the Kailash Ashram. It's still there. If you go there every evening after the worship of Shiva, and the Shiva is the same Shiva which Dhanraj Giri dug out of the ground. And so it's installed there. It's known as Abhinava Chandreshwara. The Shiva in Rishikesh is known as Chandreshwara. Chandra, moon. The Lord of the Moon means the moon is on the Shiva's forehead. So Abhinava Chandreshwara, the new Chandreshwara. And that's worshipped in the monastery. And in the evening, after the evening services, all the monks, they go in a procession. I attended it once. So we went in a procession. I didn't know where we were going. We went to the next room, just outside the temple. And there's a small room there. It's the original brick room. If you go in there, it's just full of manuscripts. So they just go there and bow down once. Not to the manuscripts. I hope they study the manuscripts, not just bow down to them. But it's just kept there in memory of their founder. And now it's a full school. It's like a permanent school for anybody who wants to study non-dualism. Monks also, but also devotees, anybody who can come and sit for the class in a traditional mode. Anyway, so that's one of the stories of the natural Shiva, which comes out of the ground or from a river bed and so on. And Sri Ramakrishna uses this as an example. So these are the ones who, from their very childhood, they're intensely spiritual. They don't need to cultivate it like the rest of us. They form a class by themselves. And then he gives the example of Prahlada, the boy who was a devotee of Narayana or Vishnu. And then he gives an example, contrasts them. He says, ordinary people, it's not that people don't have attraction towards God. A lot of people have a spiritual tendency, but they have both. They're pulled towards God and the world. And the two clearly, in Sri Ramakrishna's mind at least, the two do not go together. There's some deep contrast between the two. But they are pulled towards both. And he gives the example of a fly, so which buzzes around and sits on sweets and then goes and sits on filth and dirt also. And he contrasts it with the honeybee, which just goes to flowers and sits there and sips the nectar from the flowers. And he says most people are like the flies. They will be attracted to sensuous pleasures in the world, but they're also attracted to God and spirituality. And this struggle goes on. And most are like that. And very few have, but there are such people who are this one-pointed Godward. The ever-perfect drink only the nectar of divine bliss. One point here is that Vivekananda has pointed out that conventional religion turns into spirituality. Spirituality begins with renunciation. This turning away from worldliness. The conventionally religious are pretty worldly also. They're just good people in the world. They're not nasty. They want to do good to the world. They want to lead moral lives as far as possible. But the goal is having a good life. And you might say, what's wrong with that? Nothing. But that's not spiritual. This distinction is not clear, especially in these days. So, the goal of conventional religion is to have a nice life in the world. They are wise enough to know that immorality does not lead to a nice life in this world. We'll be moral, we'll be ethical, we'll do our duty to our family, to the society, and we'll worship God. God will help us to have a nice family life, a nice societal life, and a personal life. And after death, maybe I'll go to heaven. That's it. So this kind of attitude, that's the primary attitude. One might think, what else could be there? Spirituality is different from this. It's a whole different ballgame. Spirituality is not God for my life for God. God realization is possible, enlightenment is possible, and I will seek that. What's my goal in life? My goal in life is God realization, enlightenment, nirvana, moksha. In contrast to the earlier one. So this distinction is made clear in the Hindu view of life, the four goals of life. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So one set of goals is dharma, artha, kama, which means kama is the pursuit of pleasure. Artha is the pursuit of success, wealth, doing well in this world. And dharma is morality, ethics. And this is one view of dharma, of religious life. Nobody has to be told to pursue pleasure or money in this life. Instinctively, people chase it. What religion does is it gives a set of ethics, standards. Yes, you will pursue your goals, but not without limit, not without restraint, not entirely instinctually. Hold on to principles, and through those principles, achieve whatever you want to. One of the great sages, Vyasa, says that he says that pursue dharma. All your desires for wealth and success and pleasure will be fulfilled through dharma. You try to fulfill it without dharma, without ethics, without morality, you will only destroy yourselves and society. You will cause a lot of harm around you. So that is one set of goals, dharma, artha, kama. And the other goal is moksha, enlightenment. Are they two entirely different projects? No, because behind them both is the same search for fulfillment, for happiness. Through dharma, artha, kama, one finds a kind of sustainable happiness, but still not fulfillment, because everything is temporary, transient, everything will one day disappear. Whatever you gain in this life, and you leave you unfulfilled. Then we search for what is ultimately fulfilling, and that is God realization, enlightenment, moksha, freedom. And so that's the highest goal. If that's so, then why isn't only that prescribed? Because we won't do it. The vast majority of humanity throughout history are sense-bound and world-bound. The only way they can be helped is through a graded structure. If you straight away say, give up everything and seek nirvana, not many will be encouraged. Look at religion throughout the world today, in churches and temples and mosques and synagogues. How many are seeking enlightenment and moksha and samadhi? No, not many. Very, very few. The majority want blessings for this life. And that's all right. So this graded thing is there. But real spirituality, which Sri Ramakrishna is a teacher of real spirituality, that is a seeking for moksha, for enlightenment. And he says that begins with renunciation, with turning away from that earlier set of goals. The world is no longer my goal. God is my goal. That again, of course, it doesn't mean that you have to become a monk. You can still be in the world. Most of these people Sri Ramakrishna is talking to, they were all in the world. I mean, they were people with families and all. In the Gita, Krishna is a householder, Arjuna is a householder. So God realization can be the goal for anybody who wants it to be. Wherever you are, whoever you are. Vivekananda says, with renunciation is the turning point, the beginning of spirituality. And then he defines renunciation in the different yogas. He says, Karma Yoga gives up all selfish desires for the welfare of others. We work for ourselves, not for myself, for the welfare of others, or as a worship of God. The Bhakti Yogi gives up all small loves for one almighty love of God. That's the renunciation of the Bhakti Yoga. The Raja Yoga's renunciation gives up all sense impressions, all experiences possible. I will not see, hear, smell, taste, touch, turns inwards, away from external and internal experiences to focus on the Atman or the self. That is in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, attempt to attain Samadhi. And he says the Jnana Yogi's renunciation is the hardest of all. From the very beginning, the Jnana Yogi is expected to renounce the whole thing, because the whole thing is supposed to be an appearance. Like in one bound, like Hanuman to reach Lanka, to cross the ocean of samsara, straight away, the direct path. But in all cases, there is renunciation. The renunciation of selfishness and attainment of selflessness, that's Karma Yoga. The renunciation of the 1,001 desires which tie us to the world, and converting those desires into one great love of God. That is the renunciation of Bhakti Yoga. The renunciation of all possible experiences in order to experience God. That is the renunciation of the Raja Yogi. And total complete renunciation of all appearance, to regard the whole universe as an appearance. That's the Jnana Yoga's renunciation. And he says some have it and others have to struggle for it. So that's the first point he makes. And then the second point he makes is the difference from the preliminary level of spiritual practice, sadhana, and the higher advanced spiritual practice. And he gives a couple of examples. The same example, but in two ways. One example is, remember, this is Bengal. This is a rice cultivating, a farming area. So when you cultivate rice, there's paddy fields. And when the crop is on the ground, you can't walk across the field. It's high, you can't cut across the field. You have to go around on there are these earthen little paths with boundaries of the fields. So this is the word balk. I never knew this word earlier. So the only way you can cross is you walk across on these paths. But when the paddy is cut, when the rice is harvested, it's all barren field. It's just empty. You can go across anywhere. Similarly, when you realize God, when God becomes a reality, it's an ever-present reality, directly attainable to you, whether through devotion or through the way of knowledge. It's a reality. You don't have to take a particular way to go this way and attain God. You can go directly, because it's directly available to you. You don't have to try out a particular method. In Vedanta, I often talk about techniques like Drigdrishya Viveka, the seer and the seen, or the method of the 5 levels of the human personality: the physical, the vital, the mental, the intellectual, and the causal. The Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. Or the method of inquiring into waking, dreaming, deep sleep. But one interesting thing I'd like to point out, all those are for us. The one who has got it once doesn't need any of them. It's directly and straight away available to that person. Sri Ramakrishna was like that. So Sri Ramakrishna, you see, in order to directly, tune himself to God, it's so directly available to him. He doesn't have to practice this or that. Whatever method, even if he takes up a method, it just takes him an instant to be entirely, in the presence of God. It's so directly available to him. Somebody was doing a japa, repeating the mantra, and Sri Ramakrishna takes the rosary from him. Left hand, you're not supposed to do it on left hand. You have to do it on right hand. He takes it in left hand and he repeats it once or twice and goes into samadhi. He says, I don't know why people do repeat the mantra so many times. But you just do it once and you go into samadhi. And things that he sees, common things in the world, anything and everything can throw him into samadhi. He sees an English boy leaning against a tree. Remember, it was the British capital at that time, Calcutta. And he sees, immediately he has a vision of, it reminds him of Krishna, standing, leaning in the particular Tribhanga Yukta posture of Krishna. Somebody closed an umbrella and it took him into samadhi. Because the idea of gathering in, it throws his mind immediately into samadhi. So such will be the case. He doesn't have to walk around on the bogs of the field. He can cut across the field straight. The other example he gives is very telling. Again, from rural Bengal, there are rivers. The river transport is important. But the rivers are narrow and winding. So you want to go from this village to that village. You have to go around this way as the river flows and then come near that village and then get down from the boat and walk the rest of the way. But sometimes because it's flat land, sometimes there are these big floods. Then you can just sail your boat from here. You don't have to go around the river. You just sail from here to there, straight. That's the example he gives. For the person who's found God already. That is the advanced seeker, for whom God is a reality, ever present, ever available. It might take just a little effort sometimes, and then they have it. In the path of knowledge, Swami Vivekananda gives this example. He says it's just like a trick picture. Once you have seen the pattern, it's always available to you. You know what those trick pictures are? Sometimes you see a picture with a mass of dots, and you're supposed to see a tree, or I've seen one with Shiva is supposed to be there, or Vishnu. Some kind of picture is there. Or a tiger in a forest. It just seems a random mass of dots. Then you keep staring at it. After some time, suddenly it falls into place. And you do see the tiger, or you do see Shiva. And once you have seen it, you know how to look for it. So the next time you see it, you might see it instantly, or it might take you just a little effort. You know it's there. There's no doubt about it. You're not seeing it, but you know it's there. And if you concentrate just a little, you'll see it. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen those optical illusions, pictures like that? So, Swami Vivekananda gives that example. He says it's just like that. Once you know it, what you're talking about, you've got it. And you don't have to use techniques. You can go straight. He gives this example. This country flooded with water is a well-known example you find in the Gita, in the texts. In the second chapter of the Gita, it's there. Yamanartha udapane sarvato samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanata. Whatever you can find by going to different sources of water. A well, if you imagine a village, Indian village scene. You go to maybe the well or the local pond, different sources for different reasons. Some for drinking, some for washing your clothes, some for agriculture. You need water. But when the whole land is flooded, then you don't have to go to these different sources of water it's available everywhere. Similarly, that's an example. But what is meant here? Similarly, whatever is there in the Vedas, various scriptures, whatever is taught there, all of it is directly available. You don't have to go to separate scriptures and separate techniques for anything. It's all directly available to the Brahmanasya Vijanata, to the enlightened one. The one who has realized it, it's directly available. You don't have to go to separate books, separate methods, separate rituals. Of course, I'm giving this interpretation here. Those who have read, it might puzzle you because that's not how it is interpreted. For example, Shankara, Ramanuja, they give different interpretation. I was looking it up. So Shankara says there, the traditional interpretation in Advaita Vedanta for that verse, this land being flooded, you don't have to go to different texts. So their traditional interpretation is that in the ritualistic portion of the Vedas, where there are various rituals, and what are they for? They are for conventional religions. For those who want artha and kama, those who want things to be achieved in this world. Someone wants victory over enemies, someone wants money, someone wants rainfall, someone wants... So in those days, one thing everybody wanted was cattle. Someone wants children. So that is worldly things. You do these rituals, you will get it. And then someone wants to go to heaven after death. You do that ritual, you will get heaven. But the Gita shloka says, whatever people want through all these little things, satisfying these various desires, all of it is completely satisfied if you realize God. So, whatever people... So, the goal of the person who is conventionally religious and the goal of the spiritual person is ultimately the same. Just that the spiritual person will really attain it, and the other person will... It's a long struggle to go from one thing to another thing to another. It's just one thing after another. But the enlightened one, the God-realized one, attains fulfillment, real fulfillment. That's the meaning according to Shankara, the classical Advaita Vedanta. You don't have to... the question might be that you are setting up before me this project of enlightenment, God realization. All right, I understand. But there is something that money gives me. There is something that children give me, a relationship, a family, children. There is something that power gives me. There is some kind of pleasure that Facebook likes give me. All of that. Some power that, Black Friday. I'm just getting lots of messages on the phone. Black Friday, buy this, buy that. So there's some pleasure that gives me. Now, should I not combine both? So there is God realization, enlightenment. Good, I understand. This is a great thing. It's cool. I'll pursue that. And there's all this rest. So should I not combine that? And the answer is no. It's like when a field is or a land is flooded. You don't have to go for little sources of water. You get everything from that flood itself, when the limitless body of water. Similarly, when you attain God, you don't need anything else. God realization, self-realization, whatever you call it, you don't need to go with a begging bowl to the world. Give me this or give me that. That's the meaning in Shankara. However, Ramanuja gives a different meaning. He says that in the scriptures, in the Vedas, lots of things are taught. But those who want God realization should take only those which lead to God realization, not the worldly stuff or the other worldly stuff. So that's another variation of the meaning. Anyway, these are just... what is different?
What Ramanuja says versus what Adi.
There's a different interpretation. Or rather, what Adi Shankara says is, if you realize God, for the one who is enlightened, all these other things are not necessary. Whatever they could give, you will get by realizing God. And what Ramanuja says is more of a practical advice. When you go to the scriptures, especially the Vedas, so Vedas, what is there in the Vedas? Both kinds of religion are there, the lower and the higher, the conventional and the spiritual. So you shouldn't fall back to the conventional. You won't worry about that. It's not for you. You are a God. You are a seeker of God. So take only that. Devotion, meditation, worship. Those teachings regarding that are meant for you. Take that only. That's the meaning of this verse. The same example is used in two ways. But yes, of course, they are all pointing towards the same reality. Yes. Not mental or physical. This is, physically with the eyes one will see see exactly the same thing. With eyes you will see forms. Just like you are seeing, the enlightened one also sees. With ears you will hear sounds. So all the senses will operate on their objects. But the knowledge of the enlightened one is that all of this is Brahman. And knowledge is not theoretical knowledge. It's a living reality. Inside, outside, it's all Brahman, though they are seeing the same thing. It's like somebody looking at say there are, like a child goes to a village fair in India and they see toys. I've seen those also. Toys which they're all made of sugar. They're meant to be eaten by the kids. But some look like horses, some look like lions, some look like soldiers, some look like elephants. Now, the child's view is entirely on the lion and the horse and the elephant and wants to organize or make a hunt or something like that. But the mother or the father sees the lion and the horse and the elephant, but knows in reality they look like that, but in reality they're just sugar. So the enlightened one is like that. We are like the children. We see people here. These are mine, they are not mine, these are men, women, these are plants and animals and sky and earth. The enlightened one sees all of which we see, at the same time knows it thoroughly to be the one divinity. This is the difference. And then he asks, and what I'm saying is from the perspective of knowledge, but Sri Ramakrishna, he uses knowledge and devotion alternately. So for example, he says, without this intense attachment, this passionate love, one cannot realize God. Then someone asks a question, what does it feel like to be in Samadhi? Then Sri Ramakrishna gives two examples. One is, I mentioned last time, so the story goes like this. There is actually an insect which catches hold of small cockroaches and drags them into its little hole. Why it does that is that it's hatched eggs and it imprisons its prey in a kind of, sticky something. And so the cockroach remains there. When the eggs hatch, the baby insects of that species, they come out and eat. That's the food for the babies. And so when the babies, they grow up a little more, they come out of the hole. And now the people, the villagers who see this, they see the cockroach entering with the other bigger insect into the hole, and then two of those insects coming out afterwards, or three of them, something like that. So they feel the cockroach went and meditated on that other insect and then was transformed into that insect and comes out. The cockroach has met a much more gruesome fate. But however, the point being here that when you intensely meditate on that reality, which is, you can call it God, you can call it your own self, you're transformed into that. How would that be? Two ways. First is the mind, the level of the mind, and at the level of reality or the self. At the level of the mind, the main nature of the mind is to take on the impressions of whatever you dip it in. So Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of the cloth, which is dipped in a dye. You dip it in red, after some time the cloth will become red. You dip it in blue, it will become blue, and so on. So similarly, keep your mind on God, and keep it, and you struggle to remain there. Sometime later you will see that you are a saint. It's become like that. The mind has become the mind of a saint. It's a struggle. Because all the old tendencies will resist that. It will not allow you to keep. These are the impurities of the mind. You said, oh, all right, then I just have to sit and meditate on God and I'll become a saint. Yes, but you won't be able to do that. That's also true. Why not? It's because of my past samskaras. We are not aware of the huge conditionings of our mind. One example is, if someone tells you, unless you're a super heavyweight weightlifter, if someone tells you, can you lift maybe 500 pounds or something, and you say, no, I can't. But there are a few, like Olympic level super heavyweights or something, who can lift that. But I know the limits of my body. It's impossible. We don't know the limits of our minds also, the way our minds have been conditioned over many lifetimes. We think it's no big deal. This is a matter of sitting quietly and meditating on God. I can do that. Swami Prabhavanji says, how do I know my mind has impurities or bad conditioning? Try it. Just think, I'm going to think about Krishna or Shiva and repeat the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. I'm going to do this. Within 10 to 20 seconds, you will see your mind start thinking of other things. You won't even be able to do it for 10 seconds before another thought comes in. The reason I wanted to keep my mind on this mantra, say Om Namah Shivaya. I put this mantra in my mind. Very soon the mantra is expelled from my mind. Why? So one Swami used to give this cute examples. He said, it's like this. Suppose you have an apartment in maybe here in Manhattan, and your friend wants to come and stay in the apartment. And you say, all right, I'll give you a note to the caretaker. He will let you stay there. So your friend turns up at your apartment and knocks, and these shifty-looking characters come out and say, yes, this is my friend's apartment. I'm going to stay here. And they say, are you? I said, look, here's the note. It said, let him stay here. And those fellows, they come and grab your friend and toss him out on the street. Now, it's not your apartment anymore. For practical purposes, it's been taken over by the mafia or something like that, And your friend can't stay there. Just like that. You have this nice new mantra given to you by your guru. And you say, all right, mantra, you can stay in my apartment, my mind. And the mantra goes to the mind, the poor innocent little mantra says, the owner of this mind has asked me to stay in the mind. And out come greed and violence and lust and negativity and guilt and anger and resentment. And they catch hold of the poor mantra and toss it out on the street. That's the conditioning of the mind. But if you can dip the mind in the color of God, it will get colored in the color of God. So that's one way how the mind gets transformed. But it is a deeper way. The deeper way is this. Because our self is already divine. You are the Atman. You are Brahman. If you are devotional, then you share in the divinity of God. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of the bonfire and sparks emerging from it. Spark is not the bonfire, but spark and bonfire are both fire. You share in the divinity. So this continuous immersion in God through meditation, prayer, in whatever way, will reveal to you the already existing divinity. So that's how the insect is transformed into from one species to another, because you were never the other species. You were the divinity always. Or from an Advaitic perspective, this continuous inquiry into who am I, you realize very soon you are not the body and mind. You are the witness consciousness. You are Brahman. So like that. Yes. Is the solution to overcome past samskara, abhyasa and vairagya? Yes. That's the question. Abhyasa means systematic practice, and vairagya means dispassion. Dispassion for worldliness, for lust and gold especially. That's the question that Arjuna asked Krishna at the end of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna taught him meditation, and Arjuna's reaction to the meditation teachings. Who is the teacher? Krishna, an incarnation of God. After those teachings, Arjuna said pretty much what we all say after trying our mind at meditation for some time. Arjuna says, all these teachings are useless. Krishna is aghast. Why? Because they don't work. My mind is so fickle. When I sit for meditation, my mind flickers. It can't be controlled. It's as good as asking me to contain wind, as if one might try to trap the air or wind. And Krishna says, yes, you are right. It is difficult, but it can be done. It's not impossible. It can be done and it should be done. Then he says, abhyasa vairagya, abhyasa and vairagya. By abhyasa and vairagya, by systematic practice and dispassion, one can control the mind. Meditation becomes possible. So you need two things. Mind responds to repetition. Intellect responds to knowledge. You get something, good. Even to get something, you probably have to repeat it. You have to stay with it for a while. But the mind takes on the color of what it is dipped in, as Sri Ramakrishna says. Or in another way, what you repeat. The essence of practice is repetition. The heart of practice is repetition. Practice of what? Repeat it. Stay with it. That's also not enough. One must let go of the source of all those negativities, the worldliness. You repeat cleansing yourself, but you keep jumping into the mud every now and then. You're prolonging your agony. So you must cut yourself off from worldliness. These two together will ensure success. Otherwise, practice without dispassion, without renunciation is not a popular word in the West, anywhere in the world today, even in India, but it's very important for spirituality. Sri Ramakrishna gave the example of the 5 drunkards, friends, who after a wild night out, they were all drunk, they wanted to go back to their house, to the village, and they staggered to the place where they had not parked their car as they would here in Manhattan, but they had parked there, they tied their boat. So they got into the boat, they would have to row across the river. And they rowed and rowed and rowed. When the sun rose, they found they were still in the same place. They had forgotten to untie the anchor, lift anchor. They had forgotten to untie the rope. So untying that rope, lifting the anchor is renunciation. Just let go of thy hold. There's this student who came to the master and said, master lived on top of a hill, said, teach me how to be free. And the master said, all right, come stay with me. And every day the master made him do all sorts of things. Clean the cave, go and cut firewood for the fire, go to the village and beg for food. After some time the disciple said, he's just exploiting me, he's not teaching me how to be free. And then he gave an ultimatum to the master. Teach me how to be free, otherwise I'll go to a different master. The master thought he's going to lose a great student, so he said, come tomorrow, I'll teach you how to be free. The next morning, this disciple eagerly went up the hill to where the master lived near the cave. And he found the master holding on to one big old tree outside the cave. The master was clutching onto embracing the tree tightly and saying, free me, free me, free me. The disciple said, just let go. And the master said, precisely. Precisely. Vivekananda says, thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. Let go thy hold, sannyasi bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Cease lament. Yes. Okay. Yes and no. Advaita Vedanta, I wouldn't say it's for, people think it's very intellectual or it's very high and difficult. Neither is actually true. I have found in my own experience, it's for a certain kind of mental makeup. That much is true. That much is true. It's for a certain kind of mental makeup. And so it does appeal to people with a certain kind of mental makeup. And it's not necessarily if Advaita appeals to those people are very advanced. No, they might not be. But it appeals to them. That's one point. Second, it's not that you have to turn off your intellect at a certain time. Nor that, I wouldn't say rationalize is not a good word. One must try to understand. Look, there are these two paths. We were talking about it with somebody recently. The Zen approach through koans and the Advaita approach. The Zen approach seems to want you to flip the switch, to shut down the intellect or short circuit the intellect and go directly to an intuitive realization. The koans are, they're not irrational, but they're anti-rational. You can't intellectually get an explanation of the koans. So you have to meditate on these apparently crazy or contradictory things. Sound of one hand clapping your face before you're born, things like that. And if you say that, I now know what's the sound of one hand clapping, the master will come and hit you with a bamboo stick on the head. And so this student, it's an old Zen story. The student who comes is told to meditate on this. What's the sound of one hand clapping? He meditates and meditates, finally gets an answer. And he rushes to the master. Master, I know what's the sound of one hand clapping. And he explains something. And the master hits him with a stick on the head and says, go back and meditate. Goes back. After some time, he gets another answer, a more subtle, deeper answer. And he rushes to the master. Even before he opens his mouth, the master hits him with the stick. Go back and meditate. And then the story is finally, he's enlightened. He doesn't say anything. The master takes one look at his face and says, you've got it. Now, that's the Zen koan approach. That's not the Advaita approach. The Advaita approach uses the intellect. You have to understand things at every stage. It's not very difficult actually. It's subtle, but it's entirely always rooted in our available experience. Who doesn't have the experience of waking, dreaming, deep sleep? Everybody wakes and dreams and sleeps. That's enough. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep are not enough for enlightenment. Otherwise, everybody would be enlightened. But that's enough material to start the Advaitic inquiry. Or who doesn't have the experience of being embodied? Body and prana and mind and intellect. Everybody has it. That's enough to start the Advaitic inquiry of the 5 sheets. And then at every stage, one must carefully attend to what is being said and look in one's experience and understand what is being said. Understand it intellectually, but understand it as a fact also. And that will lead you to the realization. It's not that the realization is a series of neat arguments which ends with, hence demonstrated you are the Brahman. That will not work. But it finally, where the point it leaves you is, it's very close. You can clearly, intuitively grasp it. So the whole process is through reasoning based on experience, and it's not very complicated. It seems enormously complicated only when the other schools of philosophy chime in with their objections. There are refutations and counter-refutations, arguments and counter-arguments. There's a whole millennium of dialectical works which are written. Those are difficult. But the actual Advaitic inquiry can be subtle but not difficult. But it uses the intellect. Not rationalizing things. Rationally understanding things. Using the faculty of understanding to grasp what is there. So yes, primarily it uses the intellect. Buddhi-based approach, Vijnana-based approach is Advaita. The mind-based approach, heart-based approach or mind-based approach is yoga. And the heart-based approach is bhakti. So the emphasis is different. They use different faculties available to us to reach the same divinity. Yes. Right. So that's where the Bhagavad Gita comes in. That's why it's so important. One of the central messages of Bhagavad Gita is, it's very easy to misunderstand renunciation. Does it mean actually physically giving up my engagement with the world? If the answer was no, you can keep on doing whatever you're doing and be spiritual, then it would have been simple. But yes, it could mean that also. So the completely monastic path of giving up direct physical engagement with the world. You do not have relationships, you do not have wealth, you do not engage in a job, you are not part of the community, you are this spiritual seeker. Like Hindu monks, Buddhist monks, Catholic monks, monks and nuns. So this monastic community, so some religions have them and prize them. Especially Buddhism and Jainism are 2 religions which are heavily monastic. Especially the Theravada Buddhists are heavily monastic, but also Mahayana, the Tibetan Buddhist is a heavily monastic tradition. That's one kind. Among Christians, for example, Catholics have had a strong monastic tradition. In this country, most people don't even understand what a monk or a nun is because mostly it comes from the Protestant tradition, which rejected monasticism. So there are religions which are not overtly monastic. For example, Judaism, Christianity, some forms of Christianity, Islam, Sikhism. In all of these traditions, however, there always have been hermits. There have been individuals who have dropped out of this regular life and been entirely spiritual. So that's one kind. But when you have this, the question arises then, it's only for such people. Is it only for people who have given up engagement with the world and sitting in the mountains and meditating? And that's what Arjuna thought. First of all, he thought this engagement which he had to do is awful. War is awful. War is hell. I've seen people who are most enthusiastic about war are those who haven't fought in wars. It's people who have fought in wars who are not at all enthusiastic about fighting new wars. Now, I think that's the reason why the Bhagavad Gita is set in a battlefield. If you can be spiritual in a battlefield, then you can be spiritual in any occupation in the world. That's, I think, that's one takeaway. Now, Arjuna is taught Vedanta by Krishna. And Arjuna is sort of reaffirmed in his original argument. Right, this is great. I can become enlightened, become free of suffering, attain fulfillment. So I don't want to fight this war. That's what I'm saying to you. I don't want to fight this war. Let me go and let me become a monk and search for spirit enlightenment. Then Krishna gives him this entire philosophy of spiritualizing life, of spiritualizing work. Wherever you are, whatever you are, you can convert that into spiritual practice. Otherwise, it's not possible for the vast majority of humanity to be spiritual. And it's also misleading because often the sources of these philosophies, of these spiritual teachings, were themselves people of action and people involved in the world. As Krishna, as the rishis of the Upanishads, most of them were householders. Some of them were kings and emperors like Janaka and others. So to say that it's only limited to a particular lifestyle, a monastic lifestyle, you're making a mistake. Especially in Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, where everything is one reality. If you're trying to give that up and get this, then you're making a mistake. There's something that you're missing here. So Vivekananda's famous, his teaching, which I love, and the context one must remember. I had, after becoming a monk, even staying in a monastery was not enough for me. I had to run away from a monastery with permission. I didn't really run away. To sit on the mountaintop and meditate, to become enlightened. So I went to the Himalayas and went very high as I could go, 10,000 feet up in Gangotri, and I sat there and I used to meditate. After some time, 2 months or so, I came back. On my way back, I thought I'd done something. It was good. It was very productive for me spiritually. I really liked it. On my way back, I stopped in one of our, in an ashram. It's a little cottage in Uttarkashi. And we had done the early morning, the begging for our food, and we had food. We means monks. In the afternoon, I was relaxing with a book of Vivekananda. I still remember that day. The book said, Vivekananda says, "He who runs away to meditate and die in a Himalayan cave has missed the way. He who plunges into the vanities and luxuries or foolishnesses of material life has also missed the way." So if you run away from the world, you have missed the way. If you plunge into the world, you have missed the way. Then what is the way? There's only two. He says, no. The way is to divinize life itself, is to see God in everybody. Whoever you are with, wherever you are. It may be difficult, but the thing is, it's a fact. If Advaita is at all true, then God must be everywhere. So that is the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. How do you convert your present life into spiritual practice? It doesn't do away with the validity of meditation, the validity of seclusion, the validity of places like this, ashram. If everything is fine, it's Brahman, so why don't we study Gita in Times Square? You can, but it's very difficult. So the importance of seclusion, a special environment is good. But the holistic view of life, you must be able to spiritualize all of life. That was Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. And I think that's why it's so stark that it's set in a battlefield, the worst possible human endeavor. If you can be spiritual there, then we have no excuse. All of us can be spiritual wherever we are, whatever our circumstances. Yes. Renouncing the persona. That's the deepest renunciation. Let me just go into the last part, which I was thinking we have no time. At that time in Samadhi, do you have a trace of the ego? He says, generally a little of it remains. And then he says, in Samadhi I lose outer consciousness completely, but God generally keeps a little trace of ego. Why? He says, for the enjoyment of divine communion. Enjoyment is possible only when I and you remain. So one purpose of keeping the sense of I, separate sense of I, is to enjoy God. He says that's the real use of the I, to enjoy bhakti. But he says sometimes that also goes away. The entire persona goes away. Sometimes God effaces even the trace of I. And he gives the example of the little salt doll which went to measure the ocean. And within a few steps, it melted away entirely into the ocean. So who's going to come back and tell you how deep the ocean is? What he means is, there is a state in meditation, at the highest levels of meditation, deepest levels of meditation, in samadhi, a particular kind of samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi, asampragyata samadhi, where the three, the knower and the known object and the instrument of knowledge, the three disappear. Right now, all the time we operate with this. We operate, I am the one who's seeing, you are what is being seen, and I see with the eyes. These three, even when I'm meditating, I am meditating with my mind on God, these disappear. and only God remains, or only that Atman remains. What remains you cannot actually say, because that individual who would say it is gone for that time being. So that is, at one time the persona is you actually renounce the person at the highest level or deepest level of samadhi. There is this beautiful saying that the person never becomes free, you become free of the person. Enlightenment frees you of the person. I'll come to you. That will be the last question, but there's another side to this. Freedom from the person happens in two ways. One, actually the person disappears totally, but that's in deep samadhi. When you cannot be active at that time. At that time you cannot think, far less talk and walk and work. The personality is gone. The shell is gone. However, there's another way, the way of knowledge, which shows you the personality is just an appearance. It's like the doll, the elephant, or the elephant personality, the horse personality, and the tiger personality, and the hunter personality. They are all just sugar. Once you realize that doesn't require you to actually eliminate the personalities. They may still appear, and that is the way of knowledge. And there you can actually walk around and talk and work, and in all activities you will see that one divinity. So this is the Advaitic way and the yogic way, the two ways. Last. So deep sleep, if you're awake in deep sleep, that would be a good example of that samadhi. Yeah. One monk wrote a beautiful poem and called it the Midnight Sun. So how can there be sun? How can it be midnight, and how can there be a sun shining in the sky? But it's true. Sun is shining with all its light, but it's midnight. This is just darkness all around. The world has disappeared, your body, disappeared means from your experience. Your body has disappeared, the mind has disappeared, there is no individuality left. It's just light, and yet there is nothing but that light to illumine. So that's the closest you can come to describing samadhi. Another, Swami gave a nice example of the difference between deep sleep and samadhi. It's like deep sleep, we walk backwards into a room, a door which opens, we walk backwards into it. Then the door shuts, it's all dark, and we just staring at the door. That's deep sleep. And then the door opens, we walk back into dream or waking. But the enlightened one enters that and turns around and sees the reality which is not seen by the deep sleeper. It's a sort of close way of putting it. It's not exactly precise. These are just attempts to describe what could be in samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna puts it this way. He says the 10 pots and the sun reflected, the 10 pots, there's water and the sun is reflected in each of these pots. So he asks the people present, how many suns are there? And somebody said, 1 sun in the sky and 10 reflected in the pot, 10 pots. Suppose someone comes and breaks the pot. How many are there? And he says, there are 10 now, 1 real one and 9 reflected ones. So suppose you break the pots one after another, and then there is only 1 pot left. How many suns are there now? He says 2. There is 1, the real one, and the reflected one. Suppose the last one also you shattered, the last pot. How many suns are there? 1, just the real one in the sky. And Sri Ramakrishna says, no. At that point you can't say anything. And of course, he's not talking about sun or the reflections. What does it mean? To say anything, to even know anything, to even speak anything, you need the pot, you need the water, and you need the reflected sun. What's the pot? The pot is the body. What's the water? The mind, the subtle body. What's the reflected sun? The reflected consciousness, the awareness which we have right now. The sense of the I, the sense of the person. If you dismiss the person entirely, the reality is still there, but there is nothing which will describe it, talk about it, quote unquote, objectify it. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.